retired in 2010 as our sheriff. And then I followed Dave after he served as one-term sheriff. So in the last 45 years, you've had 4 sheriffs. That's me. I started at the St. Paul Police Department in 1980. Yeah, that's a freaking long time ago. As a police officer, I rose through the ranks. I was the chief of staff for Bill Finney, did a bunch of different things, and enjoyed a great career. I talk about growing up there because I was 21 when I started, and it was without good supervision and mentors, I never would have made it. Then I was an assistant commissioner in the Plenty administration. There's Tim and I. He was a 2-term governor, and then I eventually ended up at the sheriff's office working as a chief deputy, the number 2 position for Dave Bellows, and then was elected in both 14 and 18. I serve as my 2nd term here, and grateful again for that opportunity. So this is meant to differentiate a sheriff's office from a police department. In white is what a police department would do, and then in the black is what a sheriff's office does, at least the Dakota County Sheriff's Office does. So on the right-hand side, I won't start at the left, I'll start at the right is the jail. No police departments manage jails, only sheriffs do that. And there are 87 counties, and there's, I think, 85 or 86 jails, and they're all managed by sheriff's offices. Dodge County, Casson, Manterville area, they don't have a jail, so they actually share their inmates with, I think, Olmsted or Rice, might be Rice County, which is right next door to them. That's a big operation for me. That's half my budget is the jail. So we'll talk about the jail shortly in terms of what it meant to have inmates during COVID, and we continue to have inmates during COVID, but we'll talk a little more in depth about that. But just to get, on the right-hand side, court building security, I have bailiffs in courtrooms, all rise, those kind of things, making sure that cell phones aren't being used in the courthouse, in the rooms, and when the judge is in, on the bench. I have a deputy at the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force. No other law enforcement agency in Dakota County has a member of the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force. I have a commercial vehicle deputy. I don't know if you know this, but Dakota has the 2nd most gravel in the ground in any county in the state of Minnesota. So you will see a lot of gravel trucks. Those of you who are Lakeville, Burnsville people, and you travel east on 46, you will run into a lot of vehicles, trucks in particular, hauling gravel. And because of that, and because of a couple of highly profiled incidents where commercial vehicles were involved in crashes in Dakota County, we obtained a deputy in the budget to just do that. I think the State Patrol has commercial vehicles enforcement teams, but again, they got 87 counties to cover, a huge state. They can't spend time here in Dakota, so we do. We just had a enforcement saturation on 46 at between Pilot Knob and 52, and he took, I think, several vehicles out of service, wrote about 16 citations for overweight loads, and he knows all the rules surrounding commercial vehicle enforcement. Prisoner transport is another thing a sheriff's office does that no other place does. So, for example, you're sentenced, the judge says you're guilty, you're sentenced to 23 months at St. Cloud Prison. One of the deputies from Dakota County will take that person to St. Cloud. So those are just the differentiations. A sheriff's office is much more diverse than a police department. Nothing against police departments. Remember, I spent 23 years at the St. Paul Police Department, so it's not ill will towards policing. It's just that sheriff's offices have a lot more responsibilities thrust upon them. And the way I describe that is, if there's 87 counties, there's 87 sheriffs. There's 800 cities in the state of Minnesota, but there's only 350 police departments. Police departments are optional. There's something that a local city can decide to have or not have. If they don't have a police department, the sheriff's office becomes their default law enforcement agency. Yeah, so our year 2020 kind of started off with a startle on the 28th when Sergeant Scott Durdahl was executing a eviction order in Lakeville. to a guy, Mr. Kruger, was who he was going to evict on behalf of his mother. So Mr. Kruger's mother owned the home in Lakeville. Mr. Kruger would not leave the home. He was a meth addict, had several other issues, mental health issues, and basically kicked her out of her own home. She got a judge to agree with her, and Scott and several other members of the sheriff's office went to that address in Lakeville and had a warrant to come in, came in, was fired upon twice with an automatic rifle, missed Scott. Scott returned fire and killed Mr. Kruger. So that kind of turned our organization up on our ear. You don't have that very often, thankfully. In fact, in the 10 years I've been at the sheriff's office, we'd never exchanged gunfire with anyone. It happened before I got there once, but not since I'd been there. So it's very rare. And so we faced that. And then, of course, what happens? 2 weeks later, we get COVID-19 upon us. And that required a lot of energy, primarily to reduce the chance of infection in our jail. And our jail is a 263-bed operation. We have a philosophy of rehabilitation. So you'll see on that picture there on the right-hand side, that's our jail resource fair. That's where we have employers, housing, addiction counselors, all in a room helping the inmates kind of find their way. It is I'll be honest, a shotgun approach. We don't know what will click for each inmate, but we're willing to throw a lot of stuff at the wall and hope something sticks because we frankly don't want them back. Nothing against them, but jail is not a good place. It's not built to be a good place. It's built to confine, and that's a whole nother conversation on whether our jail, which was built in 1987, is really meeting the needs of the 2020 inmate. And I was on a panel last night and I made that comment as well, that 2020 inmates are much different than 1987 inmates. And so we need to adjust our jail. And I'm approaching my county board with that philosophy. I have a meeting this afternoon actually where we could remodel our jail to better fit what we're seeing come across the threshold. So when it's hit COVID-19, then we met with the bar, the defense bar, the prosecution teams from Dakota County, as well as the judges and community corrections, and said, how can we reduce the number of people coming in our jail? And so we were very deliberate in reducing the people that are coming across the threshold. And I think I have a slide on that. Well, before I get to that, let's just talk briefly. So each city brings their inmates, their arrests to the sheriff in Hastings. So as you can tell on the left-hand side there, you got Egan is leading the charge. They arrest the most people and have done so for the last 5 years. Then you can see how it cascades down, Burnsville, Hastings, South St. Paul, all the way down to Mendota Heights. And so you'll just see that that's kind of the flavor of who comes across the threshold in the county jail. And that's our jail population. So the number on the bottom is the male population, and it goes from 240 on the left in 2010 to 203 on the right in 2019. So it's been relatively, a little bit of up and down, but pretty stable overall. In 2008, there was a study done that predicted that in 2018, you would have 400 people there every day. Now, clearly that didn't happen. And for those of us us taxpayers in Dakota County, that's good because it's about $10 million to build onto the jail, and it's about $500,000 a year just to staff the additional space. So we don't want to build onto the jail. In fact, we want, yes, we are a growing county, but if we can avoid putting people in jail and having them serve their time in the community, it saves us all a lot of money. And the number at the top indicates the females, and females have gone up. They are greater represented now as part of the jail population. But so that gives you a little context to where we're at in the history. And so then I raised this question to you, and I'm not going to quiz you, but on February 3rd, of 20, we had 282 people in our 263 bed jail. I won't get into that. We do farm some out if we get over our number. So we had farmed a few out that day. So that was our high. And then COVID hits in March 17th or so thereabouts, St. Patrick's Day. And then we start an effort to reduce our population. And on May 2nd, we had our lowest number, and that number was 71. And we have 30-year members of our office who cannot remember when it was 71. It goes way back to before 1987 when that number was that low. So we have been very successful in keeping COVID out of our jail. We've had 2 individuals come in the jail with COVID, but we have very strict protocols on where they are. They're stuck in a cell pretty much the whole time. There's serious disinfecting going on. All the deputies wear masks. We've only had 1 deputy exposed so far since March. So we've been pretty darn successful, but it's been a team effort with local law enforcement. We were again down, we're at 125 today. So the bottom number there, 5.2 was 71, we're back to 125. And most of those 125 should probably be there. They're usually individuals that probably need to be in jail for a short period of time at least. There's some danger, felony level folks, but if they're not of danger, then we try to get them out of there as soon as possible. Yeah, civil disturbance, that hit May 26th in Dakota County. And I'll just briefly share that story. So since COVID started, we were meeting we have 11 police chiefs and the sheriff in Dakota County. We're called the Dakota County Chiefs of Police Association. And we're meeting Tuesdays and Thursdays just to keep informed on what was going on across our county with COVID. And so on the 26th, the day after George Floyd, we were meeting, Zoom, could see everybody. And in the middle of the meeting, all of a sudden the West St. Paul chief jumped up out of his chair and said, "I gotta go." And his screen went dark. I'm like, well, something's going on. And so I can listen to his channel in my office. So I'm listening to West St. Paul Police on my radio. And about an hour later, he got on the radio and asked for help. He was surrounded and they were looting. And so that started around 1 o'clock the day after George Floyd. And on the right-hand side of that slide, you can see some of the businesses that were hit by looters in West St. Paul. And ultimately, I think about 40 businesses were struck there, millions of dollars in damage. West St. Paul, between you and me and the fence post, patrols that city with about 3 or 4 police officers every day, every shift, 1 supervisor. By 7 o'clock that night, there was 175 police officers in that city from across the county. So we all came to help, and we're good at that because we all have, none of us, there's no big St. Paul or Minneapolis in Dakota County. We're all about the same size, so we all have to help each other. Then 2 days later, a couple individuals damaged the Western Service Center. Now, the Western Service Center is in Apple Valley. It has a courtrooms, 3 courtrooms there, judges' chambers. So they broke out a window and threw a Molotov cocktail into a judge's chambers, burned up her diplomas that were on the wall, which irritates judges. So Apple Valley Police Department, much to their credit, swooped in, set up a perimeter, found these 2 characters. They were not on leave from medical school. Let's just be honest. Captured them, brought them to jail. Former Dakota County Judge Erica McDonald is now the U.S. Attorney. I made a call to her. Would you consider charging this federally? And she said, I'd more than consider it. He burned up a judge, one of my favorite judges' diplomas. ATF came over, interviewed these 2 idiots, and ultimately they were charged. When they got their ride over to the federal courthouse, they were wondering, where are we going now? And we told them, and they said, I think I need to tell my side of the story. So their tunes were changing as they realized how serious a nature of their misconduct was. Well over $100,000 in damage to the Western Service Center. So those are the two primary things. Egan had a bunch of interest in going after their outlet mall, but they were very present in that outlet mall when some of the other things we did when Minneapolis and St. Paul did a curfew. Then I initiated that effort here in Dakota County, went to the county board on a Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock, and we had it in place by 5 o'clock. And you would not have believed the effect that had, because, you know, the waterbed effect, you push down on one place, it just displaces to another. And that really helped us be able to discern the good from the bad that were out rolling around in our town, in our towns, in our county. And I think it really helped us. So we had that for 2 days. We extended it one day on that Sunday. So we had a Friday, Saturday, Sunday curfew, and then we allowed the cities could do it after that. And I think Egan and a few others extended their curfews after that, but then that kind of went by the wayside. An outcome from defunding the police, the fear of citizenry that the police are not going to be there for them if they call 911, led to an outrageous number of permit to carry applications. As you can tell, on the left is June of 19 and July of 19. We're in the 200s for the month. And in June of 20, we had 877, surpassed by July last month of 1,109 permit to carries. There were lines leading out my lobby in Hastings and in Apple Valley to get permit to carry. So a lot of folks are worried, and this manifests itself in additional permit to carry applications in Dakota County. Police reform, huge issue, was passed by our legislature. John Harrington is the Commissioner of Public Safety. He and I actually worked a squad car together in St. Paul for about a year. So we know each other. I was invited to the signing of the bill, which was interesting. And, you know, there were folks, legislators, that didn't feel it went far enough. In talking to John Harrington, the commissioner, he said many states could only get 1 or 2 issues resolved. And our list is long, and I'll just go through it. If anyone has questions about any of those specifics, you can sure send me a message or a chat. So critical incident stress management, law enforcement officers, you know, face a lot of stress in their vocation. And so there's now a opportunity for them to get some help and not have it be reported to their administration. So it's kind of got a wall between getting help and reporting it to your administration. That was not available before. Investigative reform, there is going to be a group of police investigators at the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension that just will do officer-involved critical incidents like this one. That's new. Police residency reform, that city can choose to require their officers to live in town. Banning chokeholds and neck restraints, that was now in state law. In Dakota County, we've had that for many, many years. I don't believe there's any law enforcement in Dakota that allows that. Use of force reform, use of force reporting have changed. Post board reform, there's going to be a citizen engagement group assigned to the post board. The post board is the Police Officer Standards and Training Board. They license all peace officers. Requires us to have 48 hours of continuing education credit every 3 years. That's the minimum. Most of us, you know, in the hundreds, if not 200s. So that will add some community engagement, provide more community inputs to how they're seeing their police departments perform. And so that's important. Prohibited the warrior style training, which again, we hadn't allowed in many years in Dakota County. Model policies at post, mental health and crisis intervention training, mandatory training on autism, spectrum disorder, Arbitration reform, this is a big issue, mostly for police chiefs. I've not had trouble with the arbitration system. I've been successful in firing people. But some police departments have not, and they've they try to fire somebody. When you make that step towards termination, and then an arbitrator overturns your termination and sends that individual back to you, I mean, that's a punch in the stomach. It's a harm on your culture. It's just a very detrimental thing towards managing and leading an organization when you get stuck with the dude you wanted to fire. And so there's some arbitration reform, which is in a labor contract. And if you have questions about that, let me know. And then they extended our Peace Officer Training Fund monetary amount, which is $6 million annually that we can access with the appropriate training resources. Yeah, we do a lot of collaboration here. You know, all that notwithstanding what I just told you about, we still have to do our job. So COVID-19 was like an extra layer. The riots are an extra layer of things we don't quote unquote plan to do, but we do. So we have a drug task force that manages our, I'll get moving here. Manages our drug problems in Dakota County. We reach out to elders and try to speak to them so they are aware of elder scams. Elder scams kind of fall in all these Social Security, mail order brides. Grandparent one is your classic, grandma, I got arrested. Don't tell mom and dad, can you send me 10 grand? And we find people at the post office with $10,000 that they're going to mail. So we've had these, we try to get ahead of that. We volunteer a lot in the sheriff's office, and we encourage that because it allows deputies and police officers to think about other people other than themselves. And it's very important that we do that. And those are some of the ones that we volunteer at. I have a Citizens Advisory Council that reviews all drone use in the county, and we're expanding that to all use of force. So then I would have a citizens review group that would actually look at anytime we use force. I reported to WCCO TV in a story just recently, we've used force 19 times in 30 months. So there's a standard for what size I have versus other agencies. So we're not afraid of that. Transparency is a good thing. Community engagement, obviously we're out there in the community trying to engage and be trustworthy with them, and you know, the relationship between reducing or taking away someone's liberty is a huge deal, and having people trust that we're doing it on their behalf. Like I said, I have a drone program. We have mental illness initiatives, and we're building the Smart Center at Highway 55 in Concord. That is, the ground was broke, and that's my next slide. We broke ground first week of June. It'll be ready for an opening probably in a year from now. And that's going to house our drug task force, our electronic crimes task force, which examines crimes committed via technology. And then we will have our crisis intervention training that we will hold for all first responders there as well. So thank you. And any questions? I'm here.
Thank you, Sheriff Leslie. That was excellent information. And I know we asked you to pack a lot in there in 30 minutes. So I appreciate you having your contact information there for anyone that wants to reach out personally. We did have a couple questions that came through the chat. If we have just a few minutes to go through a couple of them. And one of them just simply said, how was the morale within the ranks within your department?
Not as good as it was. A lot of anxiety. Interestingly, I had lunch with the chief yesterday from a local agency, and we went from a 10-hour shift to with every other weekend off. So we try to get them to have some semblance of normalcy, so they can coach their kids, they can get to church once in a while. You know, you can't work them to death. So we try that. But then during COVID, we went to a 12-hour shift, 5 days on, 10 days off. And then they would be assigned to work from home on 1 or 2 of those days that they were off. I had a deputy come to me and said, it's too much time off. So he was complaining about having 10 days off. So when you get complaining about having too much time off, you know there's stuff going on with how things are going out there. It creates a lot of anxiety. The reform stuff, it's out of control in some communities, as you can imagine. So that stresses them. Do we have the support of the community for what we're asked to do? And that, I think we do in Dakota, but I'm not sure they do in Minneapolis, frankly.
Well, that may lead into the next question, which is, do you feel that the Dakota County Sheriff's Office is more prepared for the unrest than Minneapolis was?
I think personally, Minneapolis was hamstrung by their politicians, afraid to act. That is what happens. I mean no disrespect to a police department over a sheriff's office. I don't have to ask. I do. I act. Right. So Hutch, the sheriff in Hennepin, we're texting on that Friday night when it was going to hell, 3rd precinct and all that. And he texts me, he says, I'm grabbing the state patrol and we are going to go and take care of some business. Do you want to join us? And I'm like, no, I'm not leaving Dakota to help you in Hennepin. We got to worry about the homeland. But those were the kind of conversations that were going on. The sheriff said, I don't have to ask a mayor. I don't have to ask a city council. I can go and act because I'll get reelected in 2.5 years or I won't. But in the meantime, we're going to protect the public safety. And that's how I think. And so I think in those regards, we still have some of the same dynamics here in Dakota where you'll have a chief of police that has to check with a city mayor, a city manager, a council. How do the politics play out if we show up with helmets, nightsticks, and all that jazz and start shooting tear gas at people? That picture, those optics, might not get somebody reelected. The sheriffs, because we're elected, have to worry about those kind of things. And so we're much more able to act quickly. I have 85 licensed deputies. I don't have hundreds and hundreds of people. So I don't have the ability to have a huge presence. So I have to collaborate with all those my partners, Egan, Burnsville, Lakeville, all of them. We all have to work together on this. And these are conversations we're having daily. So we're ready.
Well, Sheriff Leslie, we are a little over our time. I know there were some questions that came up that did not get answered. So if it's okay, I'll just say that they can email you directly with those questions. But I want to personally thank you not only for today, but for your participation in the conversation that happened last night in Hastings. We did a open community conversation with law enforcement, and you were present along with a couple of your officers and the Hastings City Police Department. And I thought that it went very, very well. And I think that I would encourage other communities to have similar conversations, start building that trust. And I feel that our participants last night walked away with a whole new understanding of what happens on a day-to-day basis with the Sheriff's Department and at the local level. And just really appreciate your time for that.
You bet. Thanks for having me today. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And thanks for everyone for tuning in to the Real-Time Solution webinar. Our next webinar will be next Wednesday, August 19th at 8 a.m. We will hear from Tyrone Taylor, who is the director of the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry's Workplace Safety Consultation. And he is going to speak specifically to business COVID-19 preparedness plans. So I want to thank our sponsor for today's webinar, Doherty Melinda, Solfest Hills and Bauer, and a very special thank you to Sheriff Tim Leslie for being here. Take care.
Thank you.